All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. We are recording. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have back, without question, one of my favorite guests, Adena Bank Lees. Adena, welcome.
Thank you, Guy. It's so great to be back with you. I'm excited about our conversation today.
I am as well. So Adena is an internationally recognized authority on trauma related to child sexual abuse, in particular, covert emotional incest. Her mission is to bring CEI out of the shadows and shine light on the process of identifying and healing from it. In her book, Covert Emotional Incest, The Hidden Sexual Abuse, Adena details the complex nature of CEI, its damaging consequences, and the path to restoration of health and well-being. A leader in the field of traumatic stress and addiction, she's been offering expert clinical psychotherapy to clients, as well as training and consulting services to professionals around the globe for over 25 years. So Adena, welcome to the podcast. I meant what I said in the beginning because you, to me, epitomize what I hope that this podcast is about, which really is humanness, presence, authenticity, no BS, and pile on an incredible body of knowledge. And I just want to say that you've really honestly been inspiring me in what I do. So with that, welcome back.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate that. And it's interesting when I hear the bio, I think, who is that? Really? So it's pretty amazing about what you and I, the work we've done, what we've accomplished, and the service that we continue to offer to people. And I know that that's my heart's desire. That's my passion. That's my purpose. I'm really clear about that. My sharing my heart professionally and personally with the foundation of the knowledge. It's my purpose here this time around.
So we're going to be talking about silence, and more specifically, give us a little snippet of what we're going to be talking about. But then I want to come back to something, but share with our listeners what we're going to be talking about today.
Okay. So the word presence is so critically important, and all the research, we know this already, is that being present with someone, being able to witness them, being where they are at, and the therapeutic rapport that we develop with the client is the change agent. That's the change. That is the most important thing. You could be trained in EMDR, somatic experiencing, all this stuff. But if you don't have that relationship, if you don't have that humanness, the way you were talking about, you got nothing. Mm-hmm. So the silence part has been really a development for me. I did not learn this in school as an important clinical skill. And Richard Schwartz's work really informed me for this, and I'll be talking about how that is. But what I'm finding, and I just actually came from a session with a client where I still continue to consciously breathe, to allow the silence there so that the client can feel heard and continue to process for themselves what they need to, and come up with their truths rather than me always interjecting a question or a comment. And this is something, Guy, that I didn't know about, and that I found over the years that I was coming up with all this talk because I thought that we were supposed to do it. And then it was because I had my own anxiety and my own beliefs that I needed to fix people. And it's really clear, and I got that a while ago, and it's really clear that it's not my job. And so being able to sit with myself, we go to Richard Schwartz, the self with a capital S, and to notice the parts of me that get activated when I'm with a particular person, to be able to take care of those, remind myself to breathe and be present with them. It's just incredible how people respond to that, and the awarenesses that come from them, rather than me interjecting. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does. And as you're talking, I'm thinking to myself, silence. Okay, that can mean many things, right? What specifically? Because I'm thinking, okay, does that mean simply the pauses that we have in normal conversation or natural conversation? Does that mean the creation of an intentional silence? And I'm also thinking about, the awkward silence.
Right.
So
Right.
what do you mean by that?
Well, I think I mean all of it. So I love that you're breaking it down. Pause in conversation, very important. I see my role as the guide and facilitator of the client being able to access in psychodrama, what's called the autonomous healing center. We might call it intuition, heart and gut knowing. That's my job. And if I'm going to be talking a lot and not allowing pause in the conversation, there is no room for that person, whether it's an individual. I run a lot of groups now. I'm doing mainly group now, for them to access that. So just pausing and waiting for them. Sometimes it is a scheduled or a constructed silence. Let's take a breath here and take a notice. Breathe. I'll do a body scan with someone. I'll just ask them to be in silence to process that. I do a lot of noticing, inviting them to notice their body sensations, their feelings or emotions, and their thoughts. And I do bottom up. So putting mindfulness in action during that silence. And then there are times with that awkward silence, and I'll just sit. And it feels awkward to me, and it's a conscious decision to see what emerges from that. And I see that a lot in group now. It happens in individual, but not as much for my experience. But in group, it can definitely happen. And what I always encourage people to do is notice what is going on inside of them that makes them have to talk or do something. And how important it is in trauma work. I can be in my own body. I can be with myself and tolerate what's happening within myself and what's around me. So right there, I'll do a teaching moment afterwards. And I'll say, let's notice this. This is what we're doing. There's a purpose of it. Can we get more comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, that sounds really powerful. It sounds like you're bringing an awareness to this aspect of therapy that really isn't talked a lot about. It's almost like the negative space of the therapeutic process, right? It's the space in between all the words and maybe all the doing.
Yeah.
And also it sounds like this is requiring a lot from you as the therapist, because you've got to have your own, together to be first of all, to be conscious and aware of all of this. I want to go back to what you said a little bit before about, this wasn't always the way you worked. There was a lot when you were earlier on, there was all this doing, and for a lot of young clinicians, certainly, and for myself, it was like all about that. But talk about that process of how did this become important and vital to you, for you?
As I was doing my own personal work, I was noticing in my own therapy and being the client that I needed that time. When the therapist would consistently talk and I took a breath and there was a question or there was an interpretation come my way, I wanted to say, like, give me a minute.
Right.
Just give me a second here. So that was the first awareness. And it's one of the things I think we've talked about before, that if I'm going to be a clinician and I've never been in the client role, I have no business being a clinician. I feel really strongly about that, Guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so being, role reversing is so critically important. So having that experience. So that was pretty much a first awareness for me. And then being involved in doing IFS work for myself, Dr. Schwartz said something really important that stuck with me. And he said, in order to be the most effective you can be and create that therapeutic relationship you want, you have to be in the most of yourself with a capital S that you can. So to develop the awareness of what is getting triggered, what parts of me and what's getting triggered, so that I am responding to the client, not reacting. Reacting is just, coming up and do, but the conscious respond. And for me, the conscious respond comes when I'm breathing slowly and deeply. And it's probably because I am more seasoned. It's very early on. This is a skill that's developed. This is not something I think that comes right away, but it's a skill that's developed because, well, let me just come back here. So to breathe and to be conscious and aware of what's going on for me. What do I need to put to the side right now? Oh my goodness, my client's talking about what my wife and I just talked about last week and the struggle we had. That happens to me all the time. So it's like, well, my body wants to, my nervous system gets activated. I want to breathe. Okay, notice that, put that to the side. Be present with the client, be listening to the client. And that's the mantra. And I think I've shared this before, which is, there is a God and I'm not it. There is a God and I'm not it.
Right.
Because when I'm in the talking mode and this mode, then I am in that role of trying to make them see blank or do blank or fix blank. No, and it doesn't mean I don't guide or possibly give advice sometimes, but I'm talking as a mainstay of how I work now. So I think it's come from, you asked me, how did I develop this? A lot from my own personal work. I am more able now to sit in my own body and tolerate what comes up for me emotionally, noticing that my nervous system gets activated because I'm doing that stuff. And then I also get reinforced over time by the client's response. Like, I really feel like you're with me. It was really important that I had that time to come up with that by myself. So I get very positive responses. And there are times when somebody will look at me and go, well, say something. Right. And I say, and I will, but I want you to check in with yourself again. Check in with yourself. And then check in with what you need from me. And it'll come clear.
Yeah, that's really amazing. It's very inspiring to me, because it's about being in the moment. Yeah. Right. It requires a self-trust. It requires a certain creativity to be able to move and not feel as though you have to be directed by all this knowledge, you've got stuffed in your head. Yeah. Just want to quickly go back to, you said that Richard Schwartz, and IFS, for those who aren't familiar, is Richard Schwartz's work, Internal Family Systems, which just seems to be gaining more and more in popularity. If that could ever be the case, I don't know, but it just seems to be popping up everywhere. But you were referring to something he said about the importance of being in yourself with a capital S completely. Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
So my understanding, and I think you've had Dr. Schwartz on, I believe I've watched the podcast, so people can watch that and have a little bit more information. Self with a capital S are the 8 C's. So it's compassion, clarity, confidence, creativity, curiosity, courage, calm, and connectedness. So that's what is like ingrained in me now, is those are the energies that I want to sit in, stand in when I am embody. I want to embody those when I am with a client. So when I get triggered, if something comes up for me, may I be compassionate in this moment, come back to this present moment, so that I can be in those energies, which I believe, I've seen it, that's the healing agent for people. It's when they're around that, when they're experiencing that in me. I've seen miracles happen for people, and I see it happen in group all the time. I'm running 3 or 4 groups a week now, trauma groups a week now.
Give us a little example of what that might look like, how that might show up.
So this is an individual client that I see now, and a couple of weeks ago I was with her, and she was talking about a dynamic in her relationship. As I said earlier, my wife and I had like the week prior, and it's a dynamic that's a theme in my relationship with my wife, and it's a theme that's in a relationship with my client and her wife. And I found myself, when the client was talking, I heard my wife talking. And I went, well, what about, well, maybe you should. I was like, whoa. And I felt my body, because I'm so somatic, right? So I felt my body go like this. And I caught myself, whoa. And the client just kept talking. And I realized, well, she needs to be saying this, Dina. Shut up. Like, you need to be quiet here. And then I was quiet, and I brought myself back. And I have to say, I learned a whole ton about my wife from my client talking. And the compassion that I had and the empathy I had for my client that I have not been able to have for my wife showed up.
Wow.
And I was like, should I pay you today? This is how it works, though, right?
Right.
If I'm human, right?
Yes,
if I'm here and I'm not in all my head, am I doing cognitive behavioral therapy, humanistic? Because in the beginning, that's what we do. But 32 years in, it's a little bit different, and I can trust my intuition and the integration of knowledge more than I could at 5 years or 1 year or whatever. So that's some of what it looks like. And then another example, I was running a group, and these particular people in the group were not interested in what I had to offer. And they were very direct. Listen, we don't know you. I do groups in a substance abuse trauma treatment center. We do a couple of different trauma treatment centers here in Tucson. And when people come in to a new facilitator, because I run psychodrama groups, and so they're coming in for particular work, and they see me and they hear about this that's outside the box. They're not going to just sit and talk now. We're going to be inviting them to step out of their comfort zone, that they get scared. And so they say things like, I don't know you. I'm not going to be vulnerable with you. I'm not going to talk with you. I'm not role playing. I'm not doing this. And some of it is me to be quiet and have that silence and let them have that space. Other in group is some people are talking and then they stop and I sit. And you see them start to squirm. And I sit. And somebody says, well, somebody talk. And I just check and I say, so tell me what it's like. Tell your group. I don't say tell me. Tell your group what it's like to be in the silence. And we usually go back to, well, when I was at the dinner table, when I was a kid, and it was silent, you never knew when the ruler was going to come out and slap you. And so silence is terrifying.
Right. Yeah.
Or shaming, because I was put in the corner and said, just, nobody's going to talk to you for whatever, or keep your mouth shut for however. So it's really important fodder, grist for the mill, as we say. Everything's grist for the mill. So I see the benefits, which continues to reinforce for me that when I make a decision to have it happen, that it can be very beneficial. And I just follow myself if it doesn't feel right. Sometimes, of course, I make a mistake. But for the most part, we always learn something from it.
Where does Richard Schwartz come into the play in this predominantly? Did he highlight? Does he highlight this in his work?
The videos that I've watched of him, yes.
Okay.
I haven't seen him sit with long silences, but I watch him about how he stays in that presence.
Mm-hmm.
And I could only imagine that there are things going on for him that he's working with internally
Mm-hmm.
to have that being right there with somebody. And slowly, he does not, my experience is he does not work fast.
Mm-hmm.
And coming from New York, everything was fast. It's always fast. And I'm learning still, slow it down, slow it down. And when I go into group now, I'm real good at that. I'm still pretty fast in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to, in my own relationship, have to slow things down because I want to fix it. Let's go. Slow it down.
This is a very interesting uh, concept and practice because to me, Adena, it feels like you're really, or one is really putting faith in the relationship, putting faith in
Very much so.
um, one's ability as a therapist to be able to manage all the stuff that we've been talking about in the moment and trusting that um and then you know you talked about fixing the client and doing this and doing this. I don't know where the question here is, but how do you, and is it because you've been doing this for so long, how do you manage that need or want or desire to help the client fix, you know what I'm saying?
It's a great question because I think that's the answer to what we're talking about. So back in 1990, when I moved here, I had my first official clinical supervisor. And he said to me, a very important question, Adena, for you to be an effective therapist. What led you to be in the field in the first place? I said, that's very easy. I want to help people. And he just kept looking at me and he said, bullshit. That's, since I can remember, I always wanted to help people and I always did help people and I always had the right thing to say. And, from my own history and my family and friends. And he said, I want you to really think about that. Come back to me. So what I got after I hit my own wall, when I was working here at a treatment center for about 6 months, I was 28. And all of my family of origin issues came up for me. Perfectionism, and I could just go on list. In working in a system where I became the hero, I was working 15 hours a day. I made sure the notes were just right. I did them over and over again. They were the ones chosen for accreditation because they were so great. And I was killing myself, Guy. And I went down. And there were some other things that sexual harassment happened. Some other things happened. And I was at a point where I was suicidal. I had relapsed in my bulimia. And I went to treatment myself. And I was at a place called the Meadows for 5 weeks. And that's where I got it, that I couldn't fix anybody. Mm-hmm. Because I was even though I was young, I was still good, right? As good as I could be at 28. And if that was what happened to me, how was I going to fix anybody else? And I also saw that in clients that I was giving them suggestions because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. Well, here's this, and what about that? And this, and they weren't doing it. And they come back and I'd say, well, did you take my suggestion? No. Well, why not? And one client here's countertransference. I got pissed off and I said, listen, I'm giving you all these suggestions. What are you doing here if you're not taking them?
Right. Right.
And this client said to me, I just want you to listen. It was a huge lesson for me. Right? So what I learned in treatment was that this all came from family of origin, and that I had this big black hole inside of me from not being able to fix my parents, my parents individually, my parents' marriage, and that was one of my roles in my family. And that I thought if I could fix other people, that black hole would go away, and I'd be okay. And so that's what I thought therapy was. And people come in and say, I got to fix myself. Well, of course, I challenge that now, but I thought that's what it was. And so I was operating on that premise. And when I hit bottom myself, and then I had some clients telling me those things, just went, that's not what this is. I need to find a way to fill myself up, not by trying to control other people. What do I need to do? So that catapulted me. I had been doing personal work before that, and I had got sober. I was 3.5 years sober at that point. But it really catapulted me into a whole nother level of work. And for any therapist out there, clinician out there who works a 12-step program already, the 12-step program, I'll just put it out there, a 12-step program like Al-Anon, which is for family members and relatives, loved ones of alcoholics or addicts. A program like that really teaches you the spiritual practice of detachment with love, which is, I care about you. I'm not going to fix you. I respect you enough to allow you to have your own choices, have your own payoffs and consequences to your choices. And I will support you by being there. And if you want something from me, I'll see if I can offer it. But I don't go in and rescue you, put a pillow under your butt, do it for you, overproduce, which is, that's the story of Adena's life, is overproduce. So that type of help has been incredibly important to me. And I could not continue to do my work without the support of principles like that.
Wow. That's such an incredible realization, because a lot of us get into this field because we want to help. And like that supervisor, I think a lot of people don't really define that for themselves, and I think even for me, it took me a long time to realize why, you ride on the cloud in a sense of, well, I'm helping people, and that's great. You're helping people, but I think, like you're saying, upon self-reflection, it really uncovers a lot of issues that maybe get in the way and distort what really therapy is about, in a sense.
You said it beautifully. I think that's really important. And I had another supervisor who talked about the difference between being of service and helping. And this is just me. This is just for me in my reflection about this. Helping for me is a more to doing, more in the line of the fixing. Being of service to someone is more of the being present, witnessing, asking, I'm wondering. I wonder and notice a lot in my work. That keeps me from making suggestions and telling people what to do. But I put it out there as, I'm wondering if your anger toward yourself is really about grief. I tell myself this story that's the possibility, grieving some losses that you've experienced and the powerlessness and helplessness that you feel. And then they could go, yeah. So I'm not saying I'm the therapist. I'm telling you that this is what's happening. I grew up with that guy. My dad was a psychologist. And one of the things that would happen, we had dinner every night, 6:00. And my dad, he was Freudian trained, and he would tell us why we did what we did. And one of my favorite stories is when my brother at 13 or 14, adolescence, I was 9, and my father started with him. He goes, Dad, I just did it. I didn't do it for any reason. I just did it. And I was like, okay, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And how am I more open to things when somebody says, my experience is, I'm listening. Well, I wonder. Yeah, I can wonder with you. It doesn't mean you're telling me. I can notice, I'm noticing that you've been talking about your husband, or you've been talking about your father for 3 sessions now, and how angry you are. I'm just noticing, what's that like? Are you aware of that? What's that like for you? What does that mean for you? It's very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, again, in service of the client checking in with them and coming up with their own truths. Because I think I've come to believe in a premise that we have our answers inside of us. It's people who can witness, be present, and ask the questions that help us find those answers, which goes back to what I said earlier about the intuition, the gut knowing.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to help me with that, and provide information is helpful, but that's the mainstay.
Why is this easy?
No, this is it's becoming easier for me because I've been practicing for 15, 20 years now. I was introduced to Richard Schwartz back in the early 90s. He came out with a book called The Mosaic Mind. I don't know, 93, something like that. And it was talking about parts. And it was specifically for people, at that time it was called multiple personality disorder, which we know is dissociative identity. So we know that as dissociative identity disorder today. So his work and psychodrama, which is the mainstay of my personal work, has been through psychodrama. That I've learned how to identify parts of myself. And this is why I have this picture here,
mm-hmm.
because this is my 9-year-old self. This is where I do telehealth from. I run some groups here. I do consultation from here. And I have her up there because I want to validate for anybody who's watching that I acknowledge I have parts, because I want to acknowledge that you do too. And it's a reminder for me that she doesn't have to be doing the therapy. She's the one who was showing up and trying to do the therapy. She's the one who was the therapist in the family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a reminder to me that it's my adult that does it now, because those young parts are the ones that get tapped into. So no, it's not easy. It is hard. It takes work. It's taken me time. So to anybody who's watching who's new, please be patient with yourself. This is a practice. I'm still practicing it. And I always say, be in consultation supervision, do your own personal work, have your own therapist. Every good therapist has a therapist, and you'll get there.
I mean, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here because, we talk a lot about being present, active listening, authenticity. We throw those around, and why is that difficult? Why is it challenging to do these things? You're talking about being present. Why is that challenging for us?
Are you asking as a clinician, as a human, or both?
I'm both. I'm asking, I realize it is, but why is it? It sounds so simple.
Right. Well, I can just, I can say for myself what I've found and what I've seen in clients. Being present in the moment, being authentic equals being vulnerable. When I'm a therapist, I can hide behind that role.
Mm-hmm.
It's a role. And so when I used to go in, okay, I'm in role now.
Right.
Now I'm better at, yes, I'm in role. I am in that role. And that's important that I'm in that role, and that we both know what our role is. Client, therapist, what does it mean? And I'm softer in that role now. I don't have to hold it so rigid for fear that I might contaminate it with any personal feelings or et cetera. I'm more seasoned now, so I can play with the boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring some more of that humanness and vulnerability in. And we've talked about this before, and I use self-disclosure when I think it's appropriate to help to develop that rapport. Mm-hmm. And I'll just give you an example. So one of the things I started doing in running these groups is saying, I'm new to you, you don't know me. So what questions are important for you to ask me, or that you're curious about, that would help you feel a bit more comfortable with me, help your anxiety go down a little bit? So right off the bat, people know I'm not a blank slate.
Right.
Some of my clients needed that. Okay. But most of the time, the people that I run group with, they want to know some things. And I will be direct. I said, I am an open book with boundaries. So if you ask me something that doesn't feel comfortable, I will let you know that. But basically, and when you work with addicts, most addicts are also trauma survivors. If we talk about, Gabor Mate talks about that, and how many addicts want to know. They don't want to BS either. Mm-hmm. So I get the question like, are you in recovery? I say, yes, I am. Silence. And then I say, is there more detail you need to know, or was that enough? Most of the time, no, that's enough. Okay. Sometimes it's, what's your drug of choice? So I'll just make my decisions. But to be able to, coming back to your question, it's difficult because it's vulnerable. When I'm vulnerable, I can be scared. I can be open to threat. My young experience was being vulnerable equaled being a victim and being hurt. And so I've had to come into that I can hold my vulnerability as my strength, and I can be vulnerable with boundaries so that I'm not victimized. But again, this has taken years.
Wow. When you were talking, I was thinking to myself how this realization really shifts the spotlight, in a sense, from a lot of us. Well, I'm going to be a therapist and I'm going to help that person. But this automatically, where the spotlight is on that other person, and this is almost saying, well, wait a minute. It's so important for that spotlight, for that awareness, that light of awareness, to be within the therapist as well. You've got to have your stuff together to do all this you're talking about here. This is not easy.
This is not easy. And what I don't want people to hear is, if you're not perfect, you can't be a clinician. No. Have your stuff together means you're willing, means you're in consultation, and you're in your own therapy, and you're willing to be open and vulnerable with those people about what's coming up for you when you're working with people, because we're in relationship. And when we're in a relationship, we can go into the whole attachment theory and, what's my attachment style? I have anxious attachment. So, how am I going to behave from that place? There's so much knowledge to gain, and how that affects me as a clinician in relationship with the client or clients, if I'm running a group, family, et cetera. And what is my role? If I go back to a psychodrama perspective about roles, what is my role? And what is my purpose in my role? And how do I make that overt? Because that's another thing that's been really critical, is to make it overt, to say it out loud, for me to say to clients, my goal in being the facilitator of this group is that you get your needs met. Mm-hmm. That what's happening in your therapy process right now, that we address that. And if it's not in a psychodrama way, in action, you're not warmed up to that, then we don't do that. So it's not my agenda. And I also, in my groups, I say, it's so easy to look at the therapist. So anybody talks and they're looking at the therapist. And then it ends up being individual therapy with a group, right? In a group setting. Say, I'm not important. I'm not that important. Your group is important. Keep looking at your group. It's different than individual because somebody's looking at you, you know. Right. But I'm not that important. And that's the piece that I had to come to also in coming more comfortable in the role and being able to be more flexible and creative in the role. Because when we first come in, we take a role. This is a psychodrama thing too. We take a role, which is, right, this is what it's supposed to be like. I've watched the videos. This is what they tell me. And, you know, if I was Albert Ellis, I'd say this, you know, and if I'm Carl Rogers, I'd say this. And so I'm just kind of a robot kind of trying to do it. And then I start playing with the role just a little bit, and I feel a little bit more comfortable. And then I'm coming into role creating, which is where I feel like I'm at now, where I can be much more flexible, try things. I'm not in my head as much, like which theory is this coming from or what. I'm much more from my intuition because I've integrated so much of this and have done this that it feels like a lot of it comes naturally.
Right, right.
And I think that comes with time and experience.
Wow.
And I'm not saying to your listeners, well, you have to wait 32 years. I think you can have some of that earlier. I mean, I felt that probably 15 years or so ago, and it's just gotten more and more and more deeper and more comfortable.
That's incredible. Adena, man, I could talk to you all day. Seriously, this is what I hope and I want this podcast to be about, because it's just something so inspiring about what you're talking about here. So how people listening to this are going to be thinking and saying, oh my God, I gotta reach out to Adena. I want to work with her. How can people get in touch with you? How can people, or can they work with you? Tell us.
Okay. So I do consultation with independently licensed professionals. Okay. If someone has their associate license, I can do maybe 1 or 2 consults, but I would not work with them ongoing. They would need somebody who's an approved supervisor in their state for their licensing. So that's really important. Okay. So anybody who's independently licensed, you can contact me through my website, which is adenabanklees.com. And I think if you could post that, Guy, that would be awesome. Okay. And my phone number is on my website. There's a contact form you can fill out. I have a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page. You can look at that. I have a Twitter account. I don't use it much. I don't like it. I don't understand Instagram. My technical person does all that for me. There's just so much I could deal with. So, right. So website and Facebook. And then also, if anybody's interested about covert emotional incest, if you haven't heard about that yet, I think we did a podcast on that. So they could listen to that. And my book is available on Amazon. Okay. So they can go there and get that. And I'm happy for phone calls, emails, all that is on the website. So please go to the website. You can get all that information and contact me.
Okay. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. Adena, you have the key to this podcast. Whenever you want to come back, sincerely, love to have you back here. I knew this was going to be awesome. And it always is. I love talking to you. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Love talking to you too.
All right. We'll be in touch.
Okay. All righty. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.